Hello and welcome to another episode of They've Been Doing It All Day, Sir. I'm Ben.
And I'm Chris.
And well, this week we have been humbled. Let's get into it.
I think it just shows our real lack of knowledge of the sport sometimes, doesn't it?
It certainly does, but how's your week been, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. It's nice of you to ask me for a change.
Exactly. Thought we'd switch it up.
Nice little change in the order of the pod there. Yeah, not too bad. Quite a quiet weekend, quiet week. Nothing too much on. What about yourself?
Well, first, before we get into me, I was just going to say, feeling better this week than we were last week.
Oh, mate, yeah, I'm a different human being. Not going to lie, it took me a couple of days to get over.
You seem like
events.
a different person this week, which is good.
Definitely am, and yeah, it's been a week of reflection, I suppose. But no, a hell of a lot better than I was last week. So that's good. Thanks for asking.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. My week has been good, actually. It's been a busy one. It was a warm weekend in Sydney this weekend. We had a little mini heat wave, didn't we?
Yeah.
I think it popped up to 40 degrees or something out west, which sweltering, which is, it was a warm one. But other than that, just the usual, plodding along, watching sport, a lot of NRL this weekend.
Yeah.
A lot of upset, a lot of, controversy in our predictions as well, in some of the tips that we made, but we're going to get stuck into that. But one of the things that I did want to kind of question about is Taylor Lasalu, the Roosters prop, was concreting last week. I believe his dad and him, he works for his dad's family business in concreting, and he was only called up for the day before, or knew that he was starting the day before the Panthers game, before the Roosters played the Panthers. How do you reckon, one, his nerves were before the game, playing on such a big stage, and then secondly on that, how are your nerves before a game?
That it's not just a normal game to be called up to either. It's against
the reigning premiers,
the reigning premiers, the 4-time champions, like back to back, and it's. But I imagine like with playing a lot of sort of with and against a lot of Islanders, they're very chilled the whole time. You see it all the time when I've played Union, when we're playing American football, they're all always quite, not saying that he was, but I reckon he would have just taken it in his stride and would have been absolutely up for it and loving every minute of it.
Yeah.
In comparison to myself, if it was me, I don't think I'd have left the toilet. My life would have probably been falling out of me. I would have been hoying, chucking up.
Don't do too well before games.
Nah. Even when we're playing in front of two blokes and a dog, like in the middle of a park, I'm absolutely stressing. It's got a lot worse since I've got a little older as well. It's like normally last time I was playing back in the UK, it could have been because I was slightly hungover from the night before. I was normally fine. First couple of hits, I'd get through it, but now, I'm an absolute wreck of a human. It's quite embarrassing. I think,
you played a couple of years ago, the first year that we were working together, you played in a final, didn't you, over here? What were the nerves like before that?
They were bad, but because I'd coached in the morning and we'd won that game, and I just had a load of waiting around for the rest of the day just for the final, I think that got to me a little bit and stuff, but I was okay, whereas previously, even not last season, the season before, when we were on the way to nothing, I was still, last game of the season, bricking it. It's just got a little worse as I've got older. I can't really put my finger on it, to be honest.
I know we've spoken about it. You've tried the old, you've tried a few tactics beforehand to see if either of those work, like the shorts that you've given a go. Yeah,
it didn't work. I think that just heightened my anxiety, if I was being perfectly honest.
Fair enough.
But like I said, when I was in the UK, I think it was a lot better because I used to go out with my best mate Luke, who was the DC at the time as well. So if I got told off by the head coach, he'd be like, "Well, I was out with the DC, so you defensive coordinator, so you can blame him." So I was fine then, and then same with rugby. I've turned up to some games in States, being helped by my dad into the changing room before one rugby game, which is fun. But yeah, what about yourself? How were you pre-game?
Early on in when sporting, I'm not going to call it a career, but in my sporting ventures, I was suffered pretty bad with nerves. Like when I first started playing gridiron American football, because it was a sport that was like fairly new to me, I'd always be bricking it before a game. Like I'd go out there, always worry about what would happen, like worry if I was going to make a mistake. And then as my career kind of progressed, I then played for the London Warriors, who were one of the better teams in the UK. And we had this mentality instilled in us, like, no matter who comes in front of you, you're going to dominate them. And it didn't take long before I was more not nervous, but apprehensive about training, about who I was coming up against in practice, because I knew they were the best in the country, that when it came to a game, I was like, oh, this is easy. Now, don't get me wrong, the first play before most games, the first play of most games, I'd be nervous. But as soon as that first bit of contact would happen, the nerves would dissipate and we'd get into it and we'd be like, right, first drive done. Sweet. But then when we got into big games, like when we played our London rivals, like the nerves would be there. I'd be worried about making mistakes and kind of in that sense. But when we played on the bigger stages, I played in a couple of finals and I played in Europe, like I've never felt nerves like that before. We played in, unfortunately I was injured for the game that we played in Austria, so I didn't get to play much in that game. But when we went out to Frankfurt and played against the Frankfurt Galaxy, we played in front of like 15,000 people and my heart was beating out of my chest. We scored on the first drive of the game, which helped. And it calmed the nerves, but I was coming up against like ex-NFL Europe linebackers. There was a guy that's playing fullback. Sorry, he played fullback in NFL Europe, and he was playing linebacker. And I was like, if this guy runs through my gap, I've got to stop him somehow. And he was a unit. And then, do you know what? When I came over here and I decided to come back for that
cameo appearance
for those couple of games last season, I was actually quite nervous before then because it had been 4 years since I'd played, and I hadn't really been in the condition to come back and play, like not been in the gym lifting and all that sort of stuff, and I didn't feel my body was ready for it, and I wasn't sure. And then we played down in Wollongong that first game, put a few hits in, felt all right. maybe concussed myself.
You were not okay.
Maybe concussed myself, but then we played the Raiders, and because they're the best team in New South Wales, like there were a bit of nerves there, but again, once I realised, do you know what, I can still do this, I was all right. Then unfortunately got a bit of a devastating blindside hit, which was illegal, and I tore my meniscus. And that was the end of my sporting career. But I don't know how he's gone from being a prop, going back to Taylor Lasalio, I don't know how he's gone from being a prop, concrete, into then turning it up and putting in a performance against the reigning premiers. It's
pretty awesome, to be honest, and he held his own as well, which is the pretty amazing thing.
He did. 21 minutes and he was solid. He's taking the biggest hits of the game as well. The first hit ups,
I think the most powerful ones. I think as a forward, I think if you getting into the game like that and you're coming from sort of the lower levels, one way to prove yourself and get yourself into the game is just put yourself in front of the biggest person and just do it. Just quickly going back, I think just going back to nerves, and the first hit is most nervous I've been recently was probably when I played for New South Wales and we played Queensland. I wasn't a starter or anything. I was very much second string. But I remember going onto the game onto the field, and the way the game progressed when I was on there was not how I thought it happened when I watched it back. But I did put one big hit on the sideline, which then switched me on. And again, I think we had about 300 people there, 400 if that. But because of how they were situated, it sounded so much louder than it actually was. But then going, sort of linking it back, like you have to put yourself in front of the biggest person just to try and get rid of those nerves. And if it works out in your favour, it's always the best way. But if you get your head on the wrong side and you get concussed, then it's probably not the best way to do it.
Oh well, talking of big collisions, let's get straight into kind of the NRL fixtures from last week. The Knights and Dolphins were the first ones that kicked it off on Thursday night, and they had the Saifiti brothers.
Yep.
And there were some serious collisions between those two. I think the opening kickoff, I read something that they decided no matter who they're playing for or whether they come up against each other, they've always got to take the first kick off and run at each other as hard as they can. And I tell you what, there was one collision in the first half and one collision in the second half, which were big. So talk about blowing the nerves out.
I reckon coming up against your brother, that would be even harder than someone random, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like that sort of
You've grown up with them.
You've grown up playing, but there's also that little bit of competition element to it here. Like they know, right, I know he's going to absolutely take my head off here, so I need to be going at 100%. So that I think that just intensifies it even more. And yeah, there was some big hits in this game.
There were. It was a good game from a Knights perspective.
Yeah.
So the Knights beat the Dolphins 26-12. We both tipped that one correctly. It was about
one of a few.
It was about I think we got 50%, and we'll go through them. But there was a lot of upsets this week. But that first game, Knights turned it around from last week.
Yeah, massively.
They were 20 points, 22 points up at one point, and they were clinical. And I think Kalen Ponga
had a day.
He had a day, and Bradman Best, like we mentioned last week, needed to cut out the mistakes and doing stuff silly. Next thing you know, he's run for over 200 metres. He's carried the ball for over 200 metres and he's scored. And the Knights looked good.
Solid. You never want to overcomplicate sport, and you always want to just stick to the basics and stick to what you're good at.
Especially in the early rounds.
And I saw a lot of that from the Knights. As you said, Ponga was there creating. He was sort of first receiver sometimes and handing off to the halves and just creating that extra bit of space. And Bradman Best, as we said last week, just to settle down and get into the game and get into what he does best and just truck people and use his weight and his frame to score tries. And they looked like a different team than they were the week previous.
They did, and Ponga definitely carried them. He over 200 metres running the ball, and his body movement, the control of his body, the way I think there was one try out to the right-hand side in the first half where he caught the ball on the move, manipulated his body in a way that shook the defender, but then also passed the ball like 2 steps later to free up whoever it was. I don't know whether it was Marjorie in the corner or not, but to go over it and score an easy try. And he was the difference maker. When he's on, I think he's Queensland's number one fullback. I don't think if Reece Walsh puts in performances like he's been doing, I don't think anyone can touch Kalen Ponga. No. But a little bit of worry for the Dolphins in the post Wayne Bennett era. They're 0-2. They've lost 2 games. All right, how much has this impacted them? The cyclone, the constant travelling.
Yeah, I said that last week, and I thought there would be a bit of an impact because you've got to come down from a home game, come down to the Combank, then possibly have travelled back to see family, make sure everyone's okay, and then come down to Newcastle, which I don't think is a direct flight. I may be incorrect there. Newcastle may have an airport, but my geography,
my knowledge of Newcastle's aviation
is not the best.
Yep.
But then if they didn't fly into Newcastle, then got a flight into Sydney, then travelled.
Nah, they definitely would have flown into Newcastle. I'm pretty sure there's an airport in Newcastle.
But still a lot of Ks in a very short period of time. And when you look at sort of the comparison as in run meters compared to the Knights and the Dolphins, not one player touched 200 for the Dolphins, which is a big thing. You want at least one of your backs, either one of your wingers or your fullback hitting 200 meters to show that you've sort of put in a dent in the into the opposition.
You're making meters, basically. That's what you want to try and
do.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the Hammer, he only hit 121 meters, which for a fullback, if you go missing, like you tend to be that first one on the ball and trying to run it back and trying to get those hard yards.
Yeah.
It's not looking good for the Dolphins at the moment.
It's not.
They need to create something. They need a bit more creativity because it just looks so one-dimensional at the moment, and teams are just reading it. And when they sped up a little bit and scored, I think late into the first half,
I think they took it back to basics. They just went straight up the middle, power game up the middle, offloads, and that worked. And it seems to me that they need to go. I don't know whether Christian Wolfers tried to bring in something new that is still a bit of transition, bit of change from Bennett, but it seems like they need to keep things simple and use the weapons that they've got.
Exactly, and this is what we've talked about previously when we've delved into football and things like that. Managers always come into a team with a system in mind. that system won't always work. You need to assess, I've said it previously, you need to assess what you have in a playing group and adapt to that. There is no point trying to come in with a system that is not whether it be complicated, because you'd expect at this level that they're able to adapt to anything, but it's a system that's not playing to the strengths you play. Like, why are you hiding Hammer? Why is Hammer not there breaking it? Why is he not hitting holes time and time again? You know how dangerous he is.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see how they've
got the Tigers at home up next, which we'll talk about the Tigers later on, but they're going home. They've got a home fixture.
Yeah.
It's at KO Stadium up in Redcliffe. That having a home crowd might give them a bit of emphasis on, right, let's put a performance on and spur them on to do a bit better. But at the moment, as it stands, they're not in a good place. Whereas the Knights, they were shaky round one against the Dragons, but they managed to get the win there. And now they've won 2 in a row, and they've got the Titans next, who they looked all right against the Bulldogs, and we'll go on to that later. But I think the Knights have an opportunity to get a few early wins on the board. Yeah,
definitely. And I think no better place than playing against the Titans. Again, like you said, we'll touch on them, but to get that another win, like, they could be 3 on the bounce, where after week 1 you'd have said they may be sort of hit and miss, and going into round 4 3-0 is a hell of a lot different than going in sort of 1-2 or 2-1. So,
and then they'll be thinking, Dylan Brown, who? Why have we just forked out
exactly.
13 million when we got the weapons here? But talking of weapons, the Warriors against the Sea Eagles on Friday. It was the 6 o'clock fixture, and after 2 minutes, I thought we were going to run away with it, and then we were well and truly humbled.
Yeah, massively. And you go into the intricacies of the game, like the amount of 6 agains in the first half. I think they reached 7 in the first half, which is crazy, and they were all within sort of the red zone area as well. So you've got a team who are just constantly defending, having to get up, make another tackle, up again, make another tackle. Actually, you've just made 4 tackles, but someone's offside or there's been a rucker for injury. Do it again. Yeah, it takes it out of you.
They were on their feet. Manly were on their feet towards the end of the first half, and you could tell that with I can't remember who it was, number 2. I've forgotten his name, but he cut back inside and just went through Tavanga and Jake Trebojevic. Yeah, and there was no one near him. And I think the score was only 6-6 at that point as well. And it's moments like that that just killed us. It's frustrating because the start we made was electric.
Yeah, and it's brilliant. It was the exact same start against the Cowboys. Some fantastic interchangeable play between Trebojevic and the centres.
Dummy run from Olakwatu that just drew people in,
which is fantastic. And you've got to give it to the Warriors. They've gone and done their homework. They came up with a scheme which slowed all that down, and they were blitz defending. So they were flying up as soon as anyone was getting a touch. They weren't giving Manly any time at all. Which then led to the errors, which then slowed the game down for Manly, which is a little bit worrying in the fact that they couldn't deviate from Plan B, from Plan A to another attacking.
It's almost like we went away from that against the Cowboys. It felt like we used the forwards very effectively. Yeah. So we thought, right, let's power through the middle, engage them in the middle, and then get it out wide when we can. But because we had it felt like because we had so much success against the Cowboys out wide, we tried to get the ball out wide as quick as we could. But then you say we didn't have any plan B after that. It's like, well, if that doesn't work, what are we going to go to? And if it wasn't for some miracle kicking from Jason, well, it wasn't really miracle kicking. I think it was he overkicked it, and it was just an absolute incredible effort from Ruben Garrick. I think there was green grass between his boot and the white line, and so did the referees. But if it wasn't for, we could have been well and truly beaten.
In a lot of trouble. And the issue is, as I said, it's one way to look at it, and you are 2 catches away, I reckon, from this being 36-20 odd. Right, you've got Jason Saab's dropped interception. If you'd have caught that, he was gone. No one was catching him. So that's pretty much a try written there. And there were so many times on the outside which a pass just went the right way, caught.
There was the Faulalo try that got called back because it was a knock on, and it was the correct call. But if that goes backwards, like it did last week when Turbo knocked it on to Saab in the corner, you never know. Manly could have been three tries up.
Exactly. And do you start panicking as a Manly fan? Not at all. Not at all. Are there some cracks within the team, and they showed 100%. But it's round 2.
Yeah.
There's plenty more games to play.
One thing it has taught me is that a lot can change in a week, especially this early on in the season. There's a lot of big upsets this week that have kind of reset expectations. And
you can look at that, and you mentioned it, I think, a few weeks ago when the fixtures were came out, and we were talking about the fixtures. Warriors pretty much had 2 weeks off from Vegas. Manly had a 4-5 day turnaround, which in this sport is
flying to New Zealand as well.
Exactly. If you want to talk about a bit of travel, that's a difficult turnaround, because you've got Monday in at recovery, Tuesday you're out training, Tuesday, Wednesday when you're probably travelling over to New Zealand to get sort of settled in, acclimatised. Then you're playing on the Friday. That's such a quick turnaround to what New Zealand were. We were able to fly over to New Zealand, have a chill. So when you look at it in that way, again, because they're top level athletes, you'd expect them to be able to make the harder decisions and make the basic skills constantly. But it does play a factor.
It certainly does. And I mean, look, Manly were poor,
and Warriors were strong.
Warriors just kept to the basics. I think that Wade Egan was just doing everything that he needed to, getting the ball out quick. He was all over the place. Luke Metcalf, I think I saw someone holding up a sign saying Luke Metcalf. He was just carving Manly up, which is true. He was very, and he slotted all his kicks as well, very efficient. And I mean, look, it's round 2.
They played to their strengths,
they kept it simple, and they wore Manly down. They were getting the ball out quick, which was causing Manly not to get back on side or back outside 10. Penalties, 6 again, and it just wore them down. But Manly made errors at key times. There were 2 times we were 10 points behind. Simple mistake. Jake gets binned, and you never know. It's one of those ones that you'll never know.
Hopper Whitey drops a catch within 10 metres, which 9 times out of 10 he's taken and running back. It's those little things that killed us. Manly started to gain a little bit of momentum. Kick goes up, right, okay, get to build some momentum, drop catch, scrum to Warriors. Now we have to defend again. Yeah, it's one of those, and you talk about the attack up the middle. They've got one of the best props in the game at the moment in James Fisher-Harris there, and
his first game at home, his first game in front of a New Zealand crowd.
It was never going to be easy to run it straight against that pack.
Especially, I think with Takiaho was physical against the Cowboys. He was very impressive. I thought last week in terms of his just geeing everyone up and leading by an example. And I think we may have missed that this week. I don't think Paseka came out firing. Sipley wasn't as aggressive as he was in round 1. And don't get me wrong, Brookvale probably has an impact on that. But it's being able to do it consistently. And that's been Manly's problem. Yeah,
for many years. Like last year, it killed Manly with consistency. In they'd have amazing performances. They'd go to Brookie, fantastic. And then go away and it would then drop. Or they're not able to maintain it for the full 80.
Well, it was exactly the same venue last year, round 7. We drew 22 all. And
Manly were leading as well.
Yeah, and it was in that stretch, the first few games that we won, and we were like, get the Premiership tattoos again. And then we went out to Parramatta, lost, and then this happened, and we draw this. And it's just that inconsistency kills us. But 2 talking points from the game are the 2 injuries in DCE and Turbo. Yeah. Now, they've both been cleared and they've been named to play on Sunday against the Raiders. 9-day turnaround, which is really helpful. But do you think the team list will change before Sunday?
The only one that I would change is probably Turbo at the back. DCE was spasms, so not that I'm very clued into medical science.
I thought he'd done his back in proper.
He looked in a lot of pain, but I think a bit of needling and a few muscle relaxants. Hopefully he'll be okay in that side of things. But then this links back to something that I've mentioned to you before, is sort of match fitness with some of these players because they missed all the trials.
Yeah, there's 2 of them that didn't play in the trials. Very good point.
And when you talk about match fitness, it's not necessarily their cardiovascular fitness. Are they able to run for 80 minutes? Is their body used to being hit again? And from playing a contact sport, the first couple of games, especially when I played and still do play American football, first couple of games of the season, I can't get up from the toilet if I've gone, my legs are just cramping up. I'm in a lot of pain, massively because I'm not a professional athlete as well, and I haven't exactly perfectly looked after
I'm sure
my body.
Their diet is a bit better than yours.
Yeah, just slightly. What's wrong with cheese on toast for breakfast? And when later on in the season, you're fine because your body
your condition
is conditioned to taking the hits. So that's one of the worries that I do have about not playing them in the pre-season running is they're a week or 2 weeks essentially behind some of the other players. But yeah, it was a scary time to see Turbo just disappeared, and I'd messaged you and I was like, I wonder if this is a tactical replacement to keep the pack at up to full strength and just drop her back just for the Simbin. But then it came up that he'd gone straight down.
And when you hear tightness, I think we mentioned it in the preview for round one. We were like a gasp of breath every time that Turbo touched the ball and got into contact. Well, when he disappears with hamstring tightness or tightness in general, that also the gasps happen there. But look, round two, we're back at Brookie this weekend. We'll preview that game in a bit. We've got the Raiders, who look good at home, and the Warriors have got the Roosters at home, which takes us nicely into... So I went, after Manly lost, I was like, do you know what? Not interested in this Roosters-Panthers game. It's going to be an absolute blowout. I think the Panthers were at... The Roosters, were at $11 before the start of the game. And I was like...
I think they got to 17.
I think it went further than that. After the Panthers scored their first try, they went out to $25. And it take a brave person to back the Roosters to come back and 25-1 to get a result. But I went for a walk. I was like... I can't.
To calm down. you enjoy a bit of soul searching after a loss, don't you?
I do, yeah. So after England lost the Euros final, I took myself to DY Beach and sat and reflected for a few minutes, and then went and got some breakfast and nearly cried over my egg on toast. But anyway, so it was I took myself for a walk, and you text me and said, is there another upset on the cards? And the Roosters were 12-6 up, and I was like, I'll get back. The Panthers will be 20 points ahead, and we'll fly from there. Well, what a game this was! This was a huge upset, and thankfully for Manly, I think this overshadowed the Manly performance. The day before the game as well, the Roosters lose Lindsay Collins through illness, and you're just like, how are they going to get through this game
against arguably the best pack in the
most creative pack for sure?
They just turned it on. They turned into the Roosters of last year and were just relentless in everything they did.
The boys coming off the new guys, the debutants, the young guns that came off. Someone must have just told them what this was about, and they needed to put on a show because they came out firing and they forced so many mistakes from the Panthers. I've never seen... So Brian Toto had 2 play of the ball errors, which is basic things that you would never expect from the Panthers.
Even from him, he's the best winger, if not finishing.
His finish for their second try was ridiculous.
He's up there, and for him just to have human errors, it's crazy.
Is it the Vegas effect? Is it coming back from Vegas?
He missed week 1 as well, so it's again playing catch up a little bit of getting back into the game, but getting back up into speed. It was just really weird to watch a Penrith team that just lost their basics.
And then when you saw Dylan Edwards chasing after Tedesco and he just eases up and you see him limping, you're like, here we go. Is this the unravelling of the Panthers? And look, it's round 2. We're not going to jump to conclusions, but it will keep us more cautious about tipping the Roosters for one, because all of a sudden their stock has risen massively, but with this victory. Completely
changed. But then you think back to the week before against the Broncos and they just didn't turn up. And it's like, well, which Roosters is going to turn up next week? And then it does question the sort of the tipping. But from this game, compared to others during the weekend, I reckon Connor Watson has got that number 9 jersey for New South Wales this year.
You reckon?
Yeah, 100%. Like you just look at him, he scored 2 tries, 102 metres.
He was incredible, to be fair to him.
6 tackle breaks, 1 line break. And then you compare that to Robson, who was playing for North Queensland, 28 metres and he only had one tackle break.
Yeah, and
So,
the Cowboys are not looking good at the moment.
No, and they're looking dreadful. And the Cowboys played against albeit a very strong Sharks team, but he did that against Penrith. He was everywhere. He was creating so much chances, and I reckon he when he came on last year as well, he brought something completely different to at hooker. The ball started to speed up and he was creating a lot of chances, and he was one of the main reasons why why New South Wales ended up winning Game 3. Was he came in and changed it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I reckon if he has a couple more performances like this, it'd be scandalous to not put him in that 9 jersey.
Especially with the way the Cowboys are going. Actually, I thought the fullback debate for Origin, I think, will start brewing as well, because Tedesco had I thought a very good outing. He ran some good lines, carved up their defensive line, managed to make a few breaks. Turbo injuries, Dylan Edwards injuries. I think that's going to be a real interesting come Origin Game 1 to see who's going to get selected. But who else I thought was both of the centres were very good for Roosters was Robert Toya and Mark Nwanganitawase. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, but both of them I thought moved the ball well. They were powerful runners. They were good in defence, and it feels like they've got two good players that are kind of replacing who they've lost. In Joseph Suaalii, I know he played on the wing but can play in the centres as well, and then Joey Manu as well. They're not as good as those two, but I tell you what, there's some potential there.
I don't know. Watching Mark, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his second name.
Nwanganitawase.
That is incredible.
I think
he looks like he's played the game for years.
He does.
Which is mad, considering this was his second NRL game. And I
think he played a couple last year, but this is his second start, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, he did. He did trans over quite late, didn't he? He had a couple of the last late rounds. But even last week in the thumping against the Broncos, he had a standout performance.
Yeah, he was one of the better ones.
I wish we'd had touched on that a bit more last week. But he looks solid in that centre spot. It's going to be interesting because if he can maintain his performances throughout the year, it adds that dynamic on the left edge for the Roosters. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he goes and if he gets some sort of call up to Origin.
I wonder what the eligibility is around that.
I've got it up in here. He was born in New South Wales, so
well, there we go. Then
born in Sydney.
So what was he? He was playing. I don't know what edge he was. Does he Bradman Best? Is that who he's competing with? I feel we've got a fairly good centre.
Couldn't agree more.
But he's putting his name in the hat with the performances that he's putting out there now. And I tell you what, I think the Roosters are gonna. The consistency again. They feel similar to Manly in the consistency. They've got a lot of players coming back this week, which we'll talk about later on. But they got the Warriors away. They've got to travel to New Zealand. It'd be interesting to see how they go. And the Panthers have a huge fixture
against
the Storm down in Melbourne. So we'll preview that one in a bit. But on to the Saturday's fixtures. Now, Dragons against the Rabbitohs. Jamie Humphreys. What a man. What an absolute boy. Not only is he a unit, not only does he have the best legs in the NRL, but he's also just hoofing the ball miles.
I'm in awe of the man. Honestly, he's doing so well.
Should we get a Jamie Humphreys jersey and just hang it up?
We don't need to get a Jamie Humphreys jersey. We get a Jamie Humphreys full-size face and just hang it in the middle. I
agree, like cardboard cutout just on there.
Absolute Jamie Humphreys fan club right here. And he plays for the Rabbitohs, which is and we were just discussing before we started this, like how he sort of looked and how he performed when he played for Manly last year. And the boy looks like a second rower.
Yeah,
like or a back rower in that sense. He's put some size on, and yeah, he's just
apparently he's the best trainer. Obviously this that makes sense, but he's the best trainer, and you can tell by he must look after himself. But to go to the Rabbitohs and do what he's doing, I mean, it's going to give Bennett a headache when Latrell Mitchell comes back because Cody Walker
Yep.
I'll actually shout out on that. Cody Walker scored his 100th try in the NRL in this game. Fair play to him. That's a serious achievement. But there's some shuffling that might need to happen. But I think he's cementing himself in that 7 jersey for the Rabbitohs.
Very well in there.
In this game, though, I think the Rabbitohs got away with one massively. The Dragons were 24-12 up after 50 minutes. And we've spoken about it before in the importance of conversions.
Yeah.
And Val Holmes missed 2 conversions, which is 4 points. Both of them were on the sideline, but even still, a player of his caliber, last year, I swear he was slotting him from the sideline regularly.
He was. And it's crazy to see the comparison. And I know you just mentioned it there, the importance of going up by 6. It really does show, especially when you're scoring more tries than you sort of the opposition, but you're not converting. Then it's like, well, you're the one that's left points out there by not converting. And it's I don't know what's going on with his kicking. Is it because it's a little bit more of an open stadium, right by the seaside, bit of wind,
humidity not the same as in Townsville?
Yeah, it's you don't know. Like, I've never kicked on a professional. Actually, I tell a lie. I have scored a conversion on Bath's rugby field back home.
The Rec,
at the Rec. So, talking from my vast experience of kicking in high pressure situations on professional grounds.
Fair play.
It just seems to be a different Val Holmes when it comes to place kicking, and we have this discussion every year.
What, Ruben Garrett being the best kicker in the NRL?
Not just that, but how poor
the kicking in general
can be
compared to Union. So let's preface that with compared to Union kicking. Like, don't get me wrong, there are some. The standard of kicking is improving, but compared to Union, where the accuracy levels are very, very high, it feels like.
I can't put my finger on why, because one of them was said that it's the shape of the ball. The ball's a little bit bigger, and it's not as oval.
Yeah,
and I'm like, well, no, that's
practice.
Yeah, it's how many place kicks are the place kickers doing in training? Are they having just a kicking session? Yeah, you see Johnny Wilkinson when he's worked with the England team, the amount of reps he puts through Marcus Smith, Finn Smith, George Ford, whoever is the fly half at the time, whoever's going to be the kicker. Is it the same at league? Is this what they're doing? Well, we'll find out when we go to our little captain's run on.
We're going to watch that and see what practice they're doing.
But yeah, I think that's something. Whereas Jamie Humphreys, I don't know whether he's come from a Union background. I don't know much history about that.
Heard something random that he did actually play. He was living in London in his youth and was playing rugby union. Apparently, I can't remember where I heard that. Can't confirm that, but that would explain the kicking.
And he looks like a Union kicker. Yeah. Which again, it's one of those things that you observe and you can't really explain. But even went from his drop goal as well, which again we were discussing beforehand, like how calm he was, and
terrible setup, and he's just slotted it,
and it looked like he would have been able to slot it from the 40. Like, I can see the Rabbitohs looking at it and going, right, we could score some 2-point field goals here this season
for sure.
But enough about Jamie Humphreys.
Going back to the kicking though, an interesting thing that I heard earlier on the Buy Round podcast, which was James Graham and Nathan Hindmarsh were talking, and they were talking about the effort of the Rabbitohs defenders to stop the wingers scoring closer to the posts.
Okay,
and it's efforts like that lead to Val Holmes missing the kicks because he's kicking from the sidelines. And that's the sort of like mentality that you want to instill in young players, that you don't give up just because they've crossed the goal line, because you want to make it more difficult for them. And that's ended up winning them the game. So it seems like it's a matter of intricacies that have kind of led to Val Holmes missing those. But I do think he could improve, or just improve his kicking compared to last year. But you can't take anything away from the Dragons. They are in an unfortunate position where they've lost 2 games. Yeah, I feel the Bulldogs game, it could have been closer, and they probably could have challenged a bit more in that one. And this one, they had some serious meters from their wingers. Tyrell Sloan was at fullback actually, but he got 223 meters, 2 tries, and then Christian Tuapolotto, who was actually an ex-Manly player, got 239 meters and 1 try. He is a beast. So, but the standout performance again is the little pocket rocket at the back, Jai Gray, 311 metres, running metres.
I feel like I should just retire from commenting on players because I think this is a hill I can definitely die on. With
pre-season, you said he looked good and well.
Again, a headache for when Mitchell's fit. Does Latrell Mitchell come in and get you 311 metres?
From fullback, or do you stick him in the centres, or does he have to go in it? Like, it's a difficult one, and it's Wayne Bennett's problem, not ours. But the 2 games that the Rabbitohs have won I feel, the impact of Wayne Bennett being able to scrape victories, because the Dolphins did it when under his tenure as well. And like, we've only known the sport for 3 or 4 years.
Very young into it,
so we don't know too much about his history. You know, he's a super coach. You know, he's got a lot of skin in the game in terms of winning a lot, but it seems like he knows what to do in order to win tight games. And on the contrary to that, the Dragons will feel like they've lost 2 points. And Shane Flanagan was very vocal in his press conference after, because they've got a bye week this week, and he said, I wouldn't like to be one of my players for the next 12 days. He did call out pretty explicitly Lockie Ilias, I think, and then I heard today that he's apologised to him for that it was a bit too harsh. But when you lose a game that you should have won, you can understand the frustrations.
And this all goes into knowing your team and knowing your players as well, because I imagine there are some players that you can call out publicly, and they'll be like, right, I need to prove it. Who's this talking about me, sort of thing. Whereas I reckon some players, it can send them into their shell, and it'll be the other way. And when you look at the great coaches,
I think Josh Schuster, for example, he got called out last year for Manly, or it was last year, and he disappeared. And I mean, he's meant to be coming back from a calf, but I haven't heard.
No, but you look at arguably one of the best coaches in football in Sir Alex Ferguson. I don't think you can ever name an interview where he's called out players. He always gave the hair. Don't get me wrong. The
hairdryer treatment.
Yeah, when you listen to players' interviews, he absolutely ruined them in the changing room sometimes with verbal onslaughts. But he never did it in the media. He never called out players, even when he had the.
It was all behind closed doors.
Yeah, exactly. When he had the fights with Beckham, with Keane, it was always came out in the papers.
Yeah,
and it was never on camera. So that's one thing you've got to learn as a great coach, is knowing when to do it. But just quickly going back to Jai Gray, he's nearly got 600 metres in 2 games.
I think both weeks he was, in fact, both weeks he's been
280. Who was round 1, 311 this week. He's 9 metres away from 600 in 2 games.
Mental.
That is incredible work.
Well, next week they've got the Sharks, which will be a good test of where they're at. So we'll see how he does after that. But great segue again. It seems like they're flowing in nicely to the Cowboys against the Sharks. Now, I wasn't really interested in this game. It's one of those ones that's you love watching sport, but there's sometimes you just can't get up for watching games. And this one I didn't watch much of, but it didn't surprise me when I turned on and saw that the Cowboys got turned over 36-12 by the Sharks. And I've looked at the stats and it looked pretty dominant.
You go back to the point that you made in pre-season about you can't judge a team on their pre-season, that the Cowboys look really good, and I said nah. Like, you look at these last 2 games,
they've been terrible,
and they have been dreadful, and they've scored tries in the latter minutes at halves, and it makes the scoreline flatters them a little bit.
They in both games, they probably could have been held to 0.
Yeah.
Had both teams not taken their foot off the pedal, they could have been beaten 36-0 in both games.
Yeah. And then you sort of you look at the Sharks again. They're just.
They had over 500 more metres in attack.
That is crazy.
12 more sets, and then both of their wingers carved it up with 229 metres, Stone Street and Monotalo.
Fanua Blake is going to be an absolute cannibal this year as well.
He's a difference maker. Like, he just draws people to him, which allows then players to get free off the edge, allows the bigger boys to run off the edge and set the wing. And that's why these wingers are getting huge metres, because it starts from the middle.
You've got 4 or 5 players tackling Fanua Blake.
Yeah,
because that's what you need, and then you can win. That's what I said about week 1 at Manly was run it straight and let the fast boys do what they need to do.
Exactly.
So yeah, get us signed up in the NRL. Like we've solved how to play in the NRL.
I would not be running it straight at any of them.
No. I mean coaching.
Super coach, the two Brits that know hardly anything about the game. We'll give it a go. We'll give it a go.
Just tactics of running straight and then pass it out to the fast boys.
But the Cowboys, it doesn't come any easier for the Cowboys. No. They've got the Broncos now. The Broncos.
What Broncos team are you going to get?
What Broncos team are you going to get? But I think the Broncos will have too much. We'll focus on that in a bit.
Yeah.
And then, Sharks, Rabbitohs at home. I think that would be a good one. Good test for both. But into the next game then, on the Saturday, we have the Raiders against the Broncos. Now, I didn't see this coming one bit. So the Raiders defeat the Broncos 32-22. So this is the thing. Opinions are like arseholes. Everyone has one, right? And everyone's entitled to their opinion. My opinion, because the Raiders went under the radar, you hadn't heard anything about them.
No.
I didn't think they were going to be that good. I predicted them to get the wooden spoon. I'm happy to admit I am wrong. They are not going to get the wooden spoon. Sticky Ricky has done something magical down in Canberra because the boys are on. It shows what happens when you can go under the radar and you just focus on what you need to do. And I said last week that Corey Horsburgh can do whatever he wants, but he's not going to be able to do it against Payne Haas. And I said he can try those offloads, but it's not going to happen when Payne Haas is filling you in. Well, 2 offloads, one led to a try, was a try assist. He got 132 metres and he put in an absolute shift. He played the full first half. He played 51 minutes in total. Didn't make one error with the ball, missed one tackle, but made 24 tackles. Now, I salute you, sir, my fellow Ranger. I'm going to stand in solidarity with Horsburgh. I hope you don't cause Manly trouble this weekend.
100% he will. He will. He definitely will. It's what killed Manly last year was offloads. And
offloads.
If
offloads.
If Seaball hasn't got Manly in the squad going right, first person, if you're tackling around the legs, second needs to shut off the ball as quickly as possible.
Hit them hard, secure the ball.
Yeah, just worry about that ball. Don't worry about getting if they gain a couple of extra meters, so be it. But you just stop that top half from doing anything other than falling to the ground. Which then just links into how well they did on the other side of it is they kept Walsh and Cobbo so quiet throughout the whole game.
I still think Walsh is trying to peel his head off of the Accor turf. He has not recovered since Suolihi. He must have nightmares about that because one, it was probably one of the biggest hits I've ever seen in my life. It was illegal. Yes, it was a red card, but how you mentally, but he hasn't been the same player since. And I think he's definitely one that's underperforming this year.
He showed glimpses of it though last week against Roosters, but Roosters, he had so much time, so much space. Everyone did really well. He had 104 run meters last week, which from a fullback, again, we talked about it previously, but from a player like Walsh, where you think he's going to be line breaking, he's going to be tackle breaking, he's going to be first receiver, he's going to be first pass off a break.
He's also probably going to be catching most of the kicks downfield, but fair play to the Raiders, they were down there and shutting him down.
Yeah. And you had Cobbo, who was reduced to 139 metres, which, again, you look at from a winger, you might not be too angry at.
I thought he had an all right game, Cobbo. I thought he sat a few people down in those runs, but
does what he does. But when you've only got one of your backs hitting 200 metres, it's like you need to be getting more. You need it to in an attacking attempt. But one of the big things that shocked me when I looked at it and looked back at it was that neither of them got a line break.
No.
Which is what I talked about. They are two massive players. If you keep them quiet, you're hoping that everything else just falls in. Mariner had a good game. He was a lot more disruptive. But if you then have Cobbo and Walsh adding on top of that, that's when Broncos can.
Paddy Carrigan had a good game as well. We mentioned him about he's just solid. He's just reliable. Like Payne Haas also had a good game. Yeah. It's just the fact that the Raiders were better. Like there's similar again. Different Broncos turned up. We mentioned that if the Broncos turn up with the same attitude they did against the Roosters, they will cause problems. They didn't. I don't know again if there's some expectation that they're just going to turn up and do it. But the Raiders came out of a performance, and shout out to Matty Nicholson from Warrington.
Oh, yeah.
Late call up because of having to replace Tarpanay. 2 tries. Both of them required some after tackle effort in getting through. I think he ran over Ben Hunt for the second one. 3 people around him and managed to get the ball down. So I'm hoping he doesn't have another positive outing this weekend against Manly.
Keeping away.
But it's good to see someone from the Super League coming out 100%. And making bits.
And it's good to see that the NRL is starting to not be ring-fenced by players from this side of the world as well. Like, there are people from the Super League who are starting to creep in, which just does a lot more wonders for the game, because you'll have people back in Warrington like wanting to know how he does. I reckon the Raiders have somehow hit a number of hits, and then their socials are flying up in the northwest of England now.
Well, that game was Saturday night, right? So that would have been the game on Sky Sports on Saturday morning, which will bring in massive viewership from those people up in Warrington. So fair play. And it's not... The Broncos have the Cowboys next, which is...
At home at the Suncorp,
you'd
expect we'll touch on it in a minute, but you'd expect the Broncos of week 1 to rock up.
Yeah.
Because they are a different animal. We've been there.
Do you know what? The Suncorp is a really nice stadium. I'm a big fan of it. This is why I think Origin should be played at Allianz.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll talk about that another time, because on to Sunday and Spoon Bowl.
Spoon Bowl.
I don't think will be Spoon Bowl again this year, even though I said it might be.
Paddy Power paying out and Eels to finish last.
The Eels look terrible. So Eels awful. 6, Tigers 32. Again, this is one of those games I had a prior arrangement on Sunday that I had to be out for. But from all reports, the first 35 minutes were horrendous. This was pitch temperature of 40 degrees. It was a really warm day, but one player that did shine in that first half, Terrell May, it leads you to the question of why did the Roosters let him go? There must have been something going on behind the scenes as to why they let him go, because he's at the Tigers and he's shining. He is physical. He's taking hit-ups, offloads. He was the one that kind of stood out in that first half from all reports and the highlights that I've seen. He was incredible, but the Tigers pulled it together. Both got this one right in the tips as well.
Very, very professional performance, I think, by the Tigers. Both sort of defensively and in attack. They sorted themselves out defensively from some... Like I said last week, they looked a lot better in defence, but there was still areas to sort of improve on. And they seem to have ironed that out a little bit. I think Jerome Luai and Taruva showed their class as well this week. Taruva got firing with a hat trick, which is what you expect of him. Like, if you are a betting person, he's on your racker of try scorers anytime. Like,
especially against the Eels.
Yeah.
Having Jareen Buller and Api Coruscant back as well, who are both missing round 1, also helps. Like, their spine. So now the Tigers' spine is fully together in Coruscant, Luai, Galvin, and Buller. Although I think Buller might be out for this next fixture, but it's a case of now we see what they're about. Yeah. It was the Eels that they were playing, who are absolutely terrible, but they've got a good test in the Dolphins next. It'll be good to see where they're at in there. That
will be the test. Just like Knights in round 1, if they can, in elements, if they can replicate what they did in this game, I think they'll be able to beat the Dolphins. Yeah. But we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. So Tigers, like I said, didn't watch that one, too much of that one, but it's good to see the Tigers get a win on the board. Benji Marshall hopefully getting the boys off to a bit of a run. But again, it's only round 2. We're not going to get too ahead of ourselves.
I know. It is. It's quite hard to sort of level yourself this early in the season, because there is elements where it's really exciting. But you look at the Tigers' backs again. None of them hit 200, which.
Yeah.
But it's they're starting to get there. And
they turned it on when they needed to. In the second half, they started. I think, and one of the things that I heard on the commentary was, if the Eels didn't score that try at the end, In fact, no, sorry. If Zach Lomax didn't make the conversion, talking of good kickers, Zach Lomax is a good kicker. This was from the sideline, but if he didn't make that conversion at the end, it would have been the biggest victory the Tigers have ever had over the Eels. But he slotted it, so it wasn't. But it should have been 32-0.
There was another comment made by one of I can't remember which commentator said it. It was like, only the Tigers could concede in a game like this. And I was just like, what do you mean? Like, they scored in the 79th minute.
They switched off.
It's good to have a donut next to the opposition, but you're 32-0 up. Last minute try for the consolation try. Like,
yeah.
Come
As the
on.
buzzer's going, you're not really fussed.
I'm not too bothered, to be honest. It's not like it was shipped in the 20th minute where they got ripped open. They were solid defensively all throughout, and they just conceded in the last minute. And I just thought it was a bit of a poor comment by the commentators.
But the Eels looking all types of bother.
Yep.
They're at home, so they're out at Combank, and they've got the Dogs next. That would be difficult. But on to the Dogs. They managed to beat the Titans 40-24 now. Few concerns for the Dogs in the fact that Matty Burton has
that's a big one.
Got a grade 1 MCL, so he's out for up to 4 weeks. And then Viliami Kickout also got an MCL, so he's out for up to 6 weeks. They looked, when Burton was on the field, the Dogs looked in control, and it didn't look like the Titans were going to cause them any problems. But when he went off, and don't get me wrong, it's an unexpected injury, so you've got to quickly shuffle around. But it didn't seem like they were the most effective going forward or defensively when he came off.
With the Dogs, it happened last week against the Dragons as well. The Dogs turn it on for 20 minutes or so at a time, and they are untouchable. I reckon what they do, they can score against any team in the NRL. But then they switch off and they slow down, which is that's when the Titans started to get back into it. Was around that time Burton went off. But it was similar last week to against the Dragons. That scoreline should never have been as close as what it was. The Bulldogs should have pulled away against the Dragons last week. This week again, they had that period where they sort of sat back and weren't as effective as when they were attacking. But then after the half time, they turn it back on again, another 20-minute period where they're untouchable, and that's when they ran away with the game.
Yeah. A concern from my perspective is last year the Dogs had the third best defence in the league. Now, would they have conceded 24 points against the Titans last year? But not just that. Khan Pereira, the winger for the Titans, seemingly went in untouched twice on the Bulldogs' right, their left. And from that point, they moved Crichton out to that edge in order to shore it up, which then caused some issues around Crichton in the middle. So I just think that the Dogs are better in attack in the fact that they're averaging more points already this season over 2 games than they did last year. It's just, are they going to be able to keep it up? Are injuries going to hamper them? They look good, don't get me wrong. I think they're definitely a top 8 team and very early on. But it'd be interesting to see how they go over the next 4 to 6 weeks with these 2 injuries. But I know what you mean. 2 times the Titans were within 10 points. Yeah. And considering they were 20 points up at one point, to bring it back to 10, had the Titans have scored the next try, the Dogs did score just after half time, which kind of eased it again. But then the Titans brought it back. I thought Tino for his first hit out. And this is the Titans' first run out of the season. They've been chomping at the bit since they watched the Panthers in Vegas play, those teams in Vegas play. They've had to wait so long. So you can tell they're going to be a bit rusty. And it's just unfortunate they come up against a Dogs team that are looking good. I think they had a game underneath them prior to this, may have been a different result. They may have been able to dust off a few of the cobwebs and bring it back, but I think they'll do. I think they'll be all right this year, the Titans.
I think this week will be their we'll get a better understanding of where they are, I reckon.
Yeah. Can't judge anyone off a round 1 performance. No.
As we've very much been humbled this week.
We have. So to summarise those tips, I think we both got 4. We got some of the big ones wrong. We got the Manly one wrong, and the Dragons Rabbitohs wrong. So average tipping this week, But let's get into next week. So round 3. What a start to the weekend of fixtures. We have the Storm versus the Panthers, 8 p.m. Thursday night, Amy Park.
Thursday can't come quick enough.
I know. What's your thoughts on this one? I've got some brash thoughts, I think.
If Panthers even flirt with the idea of playing like they did this weekend and last week, they're going to get cricket scored against the Storm. Which for a Panthers team, to say that is incredible. Like Melbourne always turn it on in Melbourne as well.
Yeah,
and
I don't quite think it'll be a cricket score.
But
then saying that, the Roosters stuck some points on them, and the Storm are a lot better than the Roosters.
This is what I mean. Like if they even flirt with the idea of playing like they did against the Roosters, which I wouldn't expect them to, but the Storm have had a week off after a good week 1 win. They've had a week off.
And they've been preparing for 2 weeks.
That's all their mentality would have been is on Panthers. Right, how do we shut down Cleary? How do we shut down their pack? How do we shut down Azayao? And
they're going to want a statement win. They're going to want to send a message early.
Yeah. So I reckon I'm going for a storm win on this one.
Do you know something that I think is interesting? Jerome Luai, we've mentioned him before. Would he have made a difference in this Panthers squad against the Roosters? Because it's seemingly,
100%.
I think it's a case of he's making a difference at the Tigers. What's the impact of what Jerome Luai go? Like every year they've lost this player. What impact is going to have? And it didn't have an impact. Has Jerome Luai going? Is that going to be the kind of final nail in the coffin for a change? I'm not sure. Let's watch this space.
Not to boast again, but no. But the thing is, it's quite obvious when, as I said, when you watched him in that New South Wales team, you could see the mentality he set. You could see the mentality him and Crichton set as a standard.
Yeah.
And he's gone to the Tigers and done that. Right, it's very early to say that.
Yeah.
But if he was playing 6, I doubt what would have happened because
the mistakes. I don't think would have been there.
No.
For me, I'm going to go Storm as well
Yep.
on this one. I think the Storm looked very good week 1. They were coming up against a very poor Eels side, but what I think leans me towards the Storm is twofold: Panthers' performance against the Roosters, and the Storm have had 2 weeks to prepare. So
Yeah.
I'm going for a Storm victory in this one. The only out for the Panthers is Dylan Edwards is injured, so they brought in.
That's another big miss for him.
Yeah, for sure. And they've brought in Dane Laurie, who is an adequate replacement. He's no Dylan Edwards, but he certainly can do a job back there. Other than that, they're at full strength.
If I was Munster, I'd be putting some high balls up early to give him a bit of a test.
For sure.
The Amy Park isn't going to be sold out by any stretch of the imagination, but you can tell already. First couple of high kicks, crowd are going to be behind them.
Yeah.
He even looks nervy under one. That's in his head straight off the bat. So
they're going to want early revenge for last year's grand final 100%. As well. So we're both going with the Storm for the 8 p.m. Thursday night kickoff. On Friday, the Warriors 6 p.m. against the Roosters in New Zealand. What's your thoughts on this one?
Lindsay Collins is back, Spencer Leniu is back, and Victor Radley's back.
Oof. I don't know. I don't think Victor Radley should be back. No. They're the professionals.
That boy should be just very much looked after. And you've got Spencer Leniu back at prop.
Animal.
Who did look sort of a bit out of sorts when he started, as you mentioned. Yeah,
not used to starting, used to coming off the bench.
He'll be coming up against James Fisher-Harris, who would be pumped after. This one's really difficult. If Roosters hadn't have played like they did against Penrith, I reckon it would have been a Warriors. But seeing the knit and grit of the Roosters and what they can churn out, I think it does swing to the Roosters for me. Just
tipping the Roosters,
especially with who they've got coming back. Like,
I agree. Backfence Spence is a big addition to their forward pack. Obviously, bringing back Lindsay Collins.
He's on the bench at the moment, Lindsay Collins, but I'd expect him to be brought in, and that is a workhorse.
Depends what illness he had. Actually, he locked through illness last week. Depends how he comes from that, back from that. But I think the Warriors are going to back up their performance against Manly and go back to basics. and I'm going to tip the Warriors. So this is the first one of the week that we've gone in opposites. I think it'll be a great fixture. I think the Warriors and Roosters will both want points to prove with different things. The Warriors will want to back up their performance from last week and not have a repeat of what happened in Vegas.
Yeah.
And the Roosters want to prove people wrong by saying we're not going to finish.
I completely agree. You look at the sort of the betting at the moment, which is always a good indicator of where it's leaning. Warriors are 187 and Roosters are 197. So
it's a tight one. That's got closer. Right? The Roosters were over $2 earlier, so the markets are certainly shortening up on that one.
Yeah, but it's the stat. Those names of who's coming back is quite big for the Roosters. But I think that's going to be a good game. I think that'll be a pretty good start to a Friday, actually.
It is. And then following that, the Queensland Derby. Broncos versus the Cowboys, 8 p.m. at the Suncorp. Now, from last week, I'm going to learn my lesson. I'm not going to say how many are the Broncos going to put on the Cowboys. I think we've got to show a bit more respect to the Cowboys fans out there. But how many are the Broncos going to put on the Cowboys?
Cricket score. If we end up saying this now and the Cowboys win it by 24-22, I'll be fuming, because there is no way that week one team that came out for the Broncos is not going to put a cricket score against the Cowboys, especially the way the Cowboys have played.
Yeah,
they've not looked in either game they've been in, and now they've got to go up to the Suncorp and play in front of
down to the Suncorp.
Well, down to the Suncorp, sorry. And they've got to play in front of 40,000 Bronco fans. Like,
the Broncos can't back up their performance last week with another performance.
They're not at home as well. That's going to. It's the first home game of the season as well, isn't it? Because they played Roosters
in Sydney.
Sydney, so that's going to be the first game at home for them. And I'd expect that to G him up as well.
I want to keep my eyes on Reece Walsh. I want to see how he performs against the Cowboys. It'll be interesting to see how he goes in front of a home crowd.
If he has another quiet game, then I think he could be in trouble all season.
Yeah, I can see a Broncos win. I can see the Broncos turning up in this one.
Yeah.
See them being as physical as they were in that first game and as dominant. I think this could be a 30+.
Yeah,
30+. The Cowboys, I haven't seen enough from them to convince me that they're going to.
They don't have enough attacking intent, unfortunately, and I reckon they'll absolutely hammer Dearden as well. Try and keep him out of the game. So yeah.
But on to Saturday then. Super Saturday.
Always super on a Saturday.
It is always super. The footy never stops. So Sharks Rabbitohs at Shark Park.
I think it's going to be a very professional Sharks win, I reckon. They're just going to go through the gears. Rabbitohs have been, I wouldn't want to say lucky, but have got wins, especially last week. They won out of the jaws of sort of losing.
Snatched victory
from the jaws of defeat. Yeah. I think it's going to be a very professional Sharks win, if I'm being perfectly honest.
I think they've got too much for them. I believe that the Sharks pack and their physicality has too much for the Rabbitohs.
Yeah.
Sean Keppie, to be honest, I'll give the Rabbitohs credit. I've been impressed with the physicalness of Sean Keppie. When he left Manly and went to the Rabbitohs last season, I didn't see much from him, but it seems like he's stepped up a bit this year. And I agree. I think the Sharks are going to have too much for them.
Yeah.
I see a very comfortable Sharks victory. I want to say 13+ would be what I'd go with. The Rabbitohs will score. They will cause them problems. They will get meters on them. I think the attack that they've got in Jai Gray, Jamie Humphreys booting the ball miles to get them out of situations.
And that's the thing is Jamie Humphreys can clear it 60, 70 metres. It'd be really interesting to see what his average kicking distance is this season from sort of defensive kicks. And that changes it, because if you can get hang time on that as well and let your wingers and your edges to get up to the fullback, up to the wingers, the attacking team, it creates so much more work for them.
Just Adam Fanua-Blake though, again, running it straight,
absolute cannonball.
He'll love it. We're both going Sharks.
Yeah,
both going Sharks.
I hope Nico Hines has a good game, because again he's
been under pressure a bit, but I think he did well. He did well.
Yeah, just last week was a professional. Well, I say professional. He just got on with his job.
It's against the Cowboys though.
Yeah,
so.
But for your 7 though, you expect a bit of vavavoom every now and then. Like Cleary nearly clutched it back for the Panthers against.
One thing we didn't touch on against the Roosters Panthers was that try saver on Daniel Tupou put in on Brian Toto. Not many people stop Toto when he's 1-on-1 with the corner flag.
No.
Fair play for that. But Saturday. Get my days mixed up. Saturday, 5:30, Dolphins against the Tigers, KO Stadium. I'm not sure about this one.
50-50 one.
I'm not sure about this one.
It's going to be the Tigers' first real test. It's away up at the Dolphins. Dolphins again, first game up at home, just because of everything that happened. You'd expect you'd want the Tigers to continue with where they've been.
Yeah.
And sort of you look at week one being first gear, last week's second gear, you'd expect them to take it up another gear. And I think they've got the players in that team to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So because the players that you look at your Luais, you look at your Terrell Mays to bring it up to the next level, and I think they can. It's then just making sure everyone around them is at the same page. Whereas the Dolphins are sort of slowly getting there, and it's still post Wayne Bennett era. Maybe they're just trying to find their identity a little bit.
They've got to get Hamaso Tabuai-Fidel into it. They need to get the hammer involved more.
He needs to be 220 plus meters next week.
Herbie Farnworth, I feel, someone that's underperforming a little bit as well. He's a bit of a dog that I think can step it up. I feel the Dolphins need to step it up. Yeah. Now, I said earlier that Jareen Buller might be out this week. I don't know where I got that nonsense from. They've got exactly the same. The Tigers have got exactly the same squad as they have had last week. The Tigers need to start better than they did against the Eels. If they don't start in a positive way and they don't get points on the board early, I believe the Dolphins could take advantage of that, because they have got the attacking threat of the hammer, Jermaine Asako, and especially Katoa as well. He's one that's picked up his performance for the Dolphins late on in that game against the Knights. So this is a tight one. It all depends how the Tigers start. I'm going to tip the Tigers. I'm going to back the Tigers. Back-to-back Tigers tips.
I said last week that I'm probably going to back the Tigers all season, and it may win me some, may lose me some. So I'm going to go Tigers again.
Both going for the Tigers. And then the final game on Saturday night, we got the Gold Coast Titans making their first appearance of the season at home against the Newcastle Knights. I'm interested to see this again. Will be another tight one.
Yeah. Seeing how Ponga played last week, Bradman Best, if they can sort of link up and just do what they do best, I think they'll have too much for the Titans.
I do like the Titans pack. I do like the physicalness of their
Tino,
pack.
Yeah.
Campbell Gillard, they've got Big Tino. I'd love to be able to pronounce his surname, but I just don't want to butcher it and do him. But Mo Fodawaker as well. They've got some boys that will cause issues. David Fafita coming off the bench. If they can... Because who have the Knights lost? They've lost Kai Pearce-Paul, who got done for a high shot. I think he's got a 2... He might be appealing it, but he's got a 2-game... No, that's the Roosters guy that's appealing it. So he's out. He's suspended. And Leo Thompson as well. They're 2... decent losses. It'd be interesting to see how the packs go, and I
just didn't see enough from the Titans last week, unfortunately, attacking wise.
They've got some good wingers though. I reckon the Titans might be slept on in this one. Do you know what? I'm going to go to the Titans. I'm going to tip the Titans in this one. I mean, the Knights could well and truly turn up, and Kalen Ponga could put on a clinic. But first home show out. I'm gonna go Knights. So we've got a split one there. I'm going Titans, you're going Knights. We've got 2 that are split, but good. That'd be an interesting one to see. It's so close. Like it is. We're going off of one Titans performance as well. So we'll see how that one goes. But what a Saturday, good Saturday. And then on to Sunday. So any point talking through this one? Eels versus Bulldogs. It's at the Combank. It's at home. Can the Eels turn things round in a week? They've been very poor. What will be interesting, though, is how they do without Burton. How they do without Burton, how they do without Kick-Out. If I looked at the odds earlier, and it was actually a lot tighter than I thought it was going to be, and I believe that's due to those 2 injuries. The Dogs have got enough. I think Stephen Crichton is such a leader. He won't let the standards slip down to the Eels level, and the Eels have got a lot of soul searching to do. They're in a desperate place right now. They need to produce something and pull something out of their backside to put a performance in, just to instill some confidence in the team and the fans. I can only see a Bulldogs victory in this.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. The Dogs look so good in like I said, in those 20-minute spells where I think they could end up putting 3 or 4 tries past the Eels quite quickly.
If they blow them away in the opening 20 minutes, it's done. There's no point in tuning in.
If it's 22-0 within that first 20, I can't see any way back for the Eels, unfortunately.
I completely agree.
And with Dylan Brown, he's already thinking about his life elsewhere.
There's already talks as well. People are saying in the media about if they carry on like this, are they going to find a way to ship him out, get him up to Newcastle early?
Yeah, he's
rebuild the project earlier.
Is his mind really going to be putting it all out for the Eels?
And the news as well that Mitch Moses' injury isn't healing as quickly as they thought. Apparently, poor blood supply at the area that needs it. So they are in a sorry state of affairs. Dylan Brown's win percentage without Mitch Moses is something ridiculous, like 20%.
He's like, Mitch Moses is so good and he's so influential on that Eels team. Which if he was in there, I reckon we could be having different conversations. But he's not there, and it's been a real struggle for him. So I'm gonna go the Dogs.
Yeah, has to be the Dogs. And then on to the big one, the Sunday finisher, the Four Pines Park, the Fortress Brookvale, Brookie Oval, Manly Sea Eagles against the Canberra Raiders.
I'm gonna go Manly just because I don't believe in tipping against your team. I'm
a little different. I will tip against Manly, not in this fixture, but when it comes to points in the season where I feel they aren't going to win, I will actually tip it.
Care more about your tip than you do support for your team. I'm going to tip Manly, but I'll explain why I'm nervous. Raiders are relentless in what they do, which, as we saw against the Warriors, and they are very quick at the breakdown or at the ruck, and they've got a lot of speed, as you said, out there to open up. That's what I'm worried about, and it's the offloads. If we can't stop the offloads, I'm leaving at half time, and I don't think we're going to win the game.
Every time we've gone to watch Manly against a team that offload, so Parramatta away last year, Raiders at home, the offloads just kill Manly, and it's something that I hope they're planning for. I hope that they're foreseeing, because you just know that Horsburgh is going to be running in, trying to spin his back, trying to offload it, whip it out wide, and then they've got pace on the outside. Ko Weeks could come back to haunt his old side again and score. Then they've got his Savage back. Yeah, Xavier Savage is back on the outside. But Sebastian Chris as well was very impressive last week again. He's another one that can cause issues.
But on the flip side to all that, Manly are so good when it clicks. Manly are incredible when it clicks.
And that's usually at home.
Yeah. In front of a packed Brookie on a Sunday evening.
I think the weather's meant to be nice as well, which will get everyone out. Because when it's raining on that hill, I wouldn't like to be on it.
No, definitely not. But you look at the attack that Manly have got. You've got Kalua coming back, who was a miss.
Yeah, he was a bigger miss than I thought.
He had so much more pace. Tommy Talau's starting to come back as well. So when he's fully fit, it'll be interesting to see how the back line shakes up. You've got Jason Saab, who's not shining away from anything, which is a new. That
first try that he scored against the Warriors as well, it looked like he was jogging. And he was just eating up meters down the sideline.
And he looks stacked, and he's not afraid to get the hard yards. So yeah, I reckon Manly may just have enough. I think it's going to be a close game, so I reckon it could be like a 30-26. Because I think that this will be a lot of tries in this game, and I reckon it will go down to conversions, and who can
Ruben Garrick, the best kicker in the league,
move up by 6. Because that's how Raiders won last year on that cold Friday night. Was Ruben Garrick was missing conversions left, right and centre, and it ended up, was it 30-32 or something like that? Ended up losing by a conversion when Manly missed about 2 or 3. So I think I'm gonna go Manly. What's your thoughts?
I agree. I'm going to go Manly, and I'm glad that Tarpanay is out still for the Raiders because he is solid. Tom Starling was hitting everything that moved, though. He was very impressive. Josh Papali'i was back to his old best against the Broncos. I hope he doesn't turn up like that this weekend. But I think Manly have got enough to get it done. The fact that Takiaro is back, I'm hoping he brings that aggressiveness from the opening kickoff, whether it's running down or taking the first hit up. Sipley has actually been dropped out. Alloway is back in, which I thought Alloway had a really physical game against the Warriors. He didn't have any errors, which is unlike him. He usually drops the ball every now and then. What this will boil down to is, one, if Tom Trbojevic is fit. But then I'm not too worried about that because you do have Hopewate that can go back there. The bigger concern is that Cherry Evans is fully fit. Now, hopefully he is. But you never know with a back spasm. Muscle relaxants hopefully will get him through it. Will he be able to move like he does and be creative? We'll see. But Manly for the win.
Yeah. Also,
Manly for the win.
Bit of a rogue one to end it on. But talking about hookers for New South Wales, I reckon Tom Starling's not too far away from having a conversation as well.
Performances so far, he's quick, moving the ball, and he hits everything that moves. He is a dog. At the moment, he's showing DAWG, Liam Martin, and Angus Crichton. But then there's even talks of Angus Crichton potentially in trouble, depending on how they do against the Roosters this year. So we will see. We've been chatting a long time about the NRL. So let's move on quickly to the Six Nations, just have a quick roundup about that. So finished over the weekend. France, unfortunately, ran out winners. I thought Scotland might give them a bit of a test, but it never materialised. England finished very strong, though. This is very promising. One for Lions picks, in the fact that England's back row were on. The Curry brothers and Ben Earl. This is a conversation to be had. I reckon as a unit, they're arguably the best back row unit. As individual players, I think there's players better than them to go. Here's a stat for you that I saw earlier. Breakdown steals over the whole tournament. Tom Curry 5, so equal all rank number 2. Tom Curry 5 steals, Ben Curry 5 steals, Ben Earl 5 steals.
Okay.
As a unit,
yeah. But as I said, as a unit, they're incredible. And it showed just the speed around the breakdown there. They're not Earl isn't a big lumpy number 8. He is a number 8 that can shift, and he's got a lot of pace. And I haven't said it this week, but they as a 3, they're also interchangeable.
Yes,
which really helps in that side of things. It's so funny what happens when you attack, and you stop box kicking from everywhere, and it's quite amazing to see.
Turned Wales over in their backyard.
Yeah, which I think the majority of pundits were very much saying it was it was going to be a bit of banana skin, but Ireland again. They got Triple Crown on the verge of Grand Slam.
Changing of the guard.
Ended up at 3rd. So it'd be interesting to see how they progress through autumn internationals and things like that. They are starting to have players age out, but they're starting to get some good players coming through as well. Pendergrass, as I think I haven't seen enough from other fly halves for him not to be in conversation for the number 10.
Good tournament for the French, though. Louis Bielbiare, or however you pronounce his name, broke the record of most tries in a Six Nations, scoring 8. Tommy Freeman finished 2nd in the try scored with 5. Good outing for him. I think he scored in every single game that he played, so 1 try in each of the games, which is great. France were definitely... Even though England beat them, I think that performance that they put in against Ireland was enough to kind of, and their relentlessness against Italy, which England didn't put their foot on the throat enough against Italy. Then we blow out Wales, too little, too late. But was impressive England's comeback, and due to that, I would actually put Mario Itoje within a shout of becoming the Lions captain.
100%. I think it's etched in there. I think he's very much a leader. He's been sort of. I know it's not a great word to use, but he's been groomed to be the England captain from a very young age. That was written in the stars. Next step for him would be Lions captain.
3-0 whitewash over in Australia. Lions captain.
Yeah, that's going to be the thing. See how they all gel together.
But yeah, we'll preview the Lions coming up in coming weeks. Six Nations was a massive audition for that. I think there's certainly some people that stood out. But another jam-packed episode this week. A lot to talk about. A lot of fixtures over the weekend that we're going to review next week.
Yep.
But thank you for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Good night as always.